I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief brought to you by Lay of the Land and Chag, Haatzmaut, Sameach, everybody. I'm so excited. I need both hands today. The flyover is dazzling us as we speak with F-35s and acrobatics and helicopters. The smell of the ala aish or barbecue or braaivleis, as some of you may call it, is wafting over the air. The balconies, the gardens, the buildings are bedecked in their blue and white. Israel is ready to celebrate, and celebrate we will. We'll also do a great fair share of eating, but hey, that is our tradition every single year, and we certainly look forward to it with great pride. Now, Israel is several thousand years old, but 74 years young as a modern Jewish state, the nation state of the Jewish people. But let's take a look at some of our notable achievements over the last now nearly 8 decades. And we start with how this beautiful country was born. It was born out of strife. We know how it was formed previously. The British Mandate of Palestine voted in at the United Nations in November 1947 to be divided between the Arabs and the Jews. We accepted it, and today we have this incredible flourishing state. Despite the many wars that we have fought, the many operations against terror and various intifadas, we are still standing and still flourishing. Now, for the last 2 years, we haven't been able to celebrate as we would have liked to. As we know, the world has endured a pandemic which sent most of us into lockdowns and into restrictions. But this year, it's all different as we come out wearing our best blue and white. And Israel has and continues to lead in so many fields. Over its first fledgling years, the whole concept of kibbutzim, that whole concept of socialist and togetherness and community, was really something that the world looked on with great admiration. Now, over the years, as Israel's grown and our economy has grown, the kibbutzim, as they once were known, have also grown. They've become more capitalist in their outlook, and the country has moved from that of pioneers to those of innovators. It is no secret Israel enjoys the reputation of being the startup nation, but today we've moved more from startups to real innovators. Those fledgling startups have now grown up to be mega companies, and we all know those success stories like Mobileye and Waze and various others. Anybody looking to invest their smart money in Israel knows that if you're in the tech industry, the best R&D, research and development, is right here in Israel. Apple does, Intel does, Google does, Facebook does. They all know where the smart people are, and they're right here. Israel has also realized over the last couple of decades that it is not just planet Earth that we need to explore and where we need to achieve, but it is also in outer space. Our hearts were broken when our very first astronaut, Ilan Ramon, his return to Earth wasn't successful as the Columbia disintegrated on re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and it absolutely broke the hearts of our nation. But in the last couple of years, our forays into space have been a tremendous success. Just 3 years ago, we sent the first unmanned space vehicle, the Bereshit, into space with the intention of landing delicately on the moon. Well, it didn't quite land delicately, it more crash landed, but in my opinion, that is exactly how we drive on our roads here. So it's absolutely indicative of Israel, but we saw it as a huge success and an opportunity to learn and improve. And just over the last couple of weeks, we brought you the story of our very own Eitan Stibbe, businessman and philanthropist, who was the second Israeli astronaut in space. He boarded the International Space Station. He spent about 2 weeks there speaking to children, our next generation of great innovators. He did several scientific experiments and really showed the world Israeli ingenuity and philanthropy. Now, We know that Israel is great at innovating, but we're also great at humanitarian assistance. Some of our most notable organizations are organizations like Save a Child's Heart that brings children from all over the world, including countries where we do not have bilateral relations, from Gaza, from Iraq, from Africa, from the Caribbean, from Eastern Europe, children who need those life-saving medical surgeries for their hearts come to Israel and receive that and their care free of charge. But it is not just that where Israel is a leader in humanitarian assistance. Wherever there is a disaster in the world, be it natural or otherwise, Israeli search and rescue teams, psychotrauma units, and others are dispatched with immediate effect. We have been dispatched to Haiti, more recently to Florida in the United States with the collapse of the building in Surfside, the Champlain, and of course over the last 2 months to Ukraine, where we set up the world's only field hospital to serve Ukrainian evacuees. And as those Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, so we dispatched various units like Israel Aid, like United Hatzalah, like Zaka and various others. Israel is noted for the way that we respond to disaster. So much so that the United Nations, often not the most friendly place for Israel, has lauded Israel for our humanitarian efforts. And we largely thank our Israel Defense Forces for the way that they operate, sending their engineers, their search and rescue, their medical corps, and their best personnel from the Home Front Command to assist wherever needed. One of the greatest stories to come from the IDF is the Operation Good Neighbor that we engaged with Syria just several years ago as that country was engaged in civil war. Now, Syria technically is an enemy country to Israel, but we understood and we recognized very quickly the need for ordinary Syrians who didn't have access to adequate medical assistance receive everything they need. We worked in partnership with several NGOs on the ground there to bring Syrians into Israel to receive medical attention, and part of that was also our ability to rescue members of the humanitarian organization, the White Helmets, get out of Syria safely as their lives became increasingly under threat and get to safety in neighboring Jordan. And on the subject of Jordan, when Israel was formed, it didn't look likely that we would have peace with various Arab countries in our region. Over the years, we've made peace with Jordan, with Egypt, and of course, over the last 2 years, we cannot forget those historical peace accords with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and the Sudan. And we cannot wait to see who is going to join our Abrahamic Accord family as we look forward to normalization and peace with other countries. Over the last year or so, the world has marveled how Israel, a country that many only look at from a perspective of viewing our conflict with the Palestinians, has managed to bring together a coalition government. Okay, some might say it's held together with sticky tape and glue and maybe a little bit of dry chewing gum, but it really is the little coalition that could, made up of parties from the far left to the far right, and with its deciding kingmaker in the middle, the Ra'am party, a Arab party headed by Mansour Abbas. Israel's coalition government has faced its fair share of challenges, but we're still standing strong. It really is a modern day miracle, and Israel's bearing in the world, our reputation in the world, continues to open up more and more and more. Now, some people might say, well, you face existential threats with Iran. You have the BDS movement with their libelous accusation of apartheid. Surely Israel must be affected by this. I'll tell you a little secret. Israel is thriving. Our economy is growing. Our recognition as a major power player in our region is growing. And we even sometimes are the country that many countries turn to when it seems like some kind of mediation efforts are needed. You know what I'm talking about. So for those that are wishing Israel's destruction, you don't have any effect on this country, but you do have effect on Jewish communities around the world, something that you might want to keep in mind. Now, as we wrap up this broadcast, we want to say, Chag Haatzmaut, Sameach, Israel. You have been the dream that has sustained so many through the generations. We cannot help but think of our ancestors in places like Poland and Lithuania, Russia, and various other places in the world who did not have a safe place to go to. We think of our brothers and sisters in places like Yemen and Ethiopia, who Israel was the dream that sustained them. And as so many were exiled out of countries because of regime changes or because of the fact that the modern state was created, we opened our arms and welcomed you home, because home is where you deserve to be. And for so many people who have made Israel their home, not because they are forced out, by choice, the olim, we say thank you for helping to make this country the success that it is, because it is the people in this country that are the true national treasure, that are the greatest achievement. From 82 countries with so many different language, cultures and ethnicities, Israel has fulfilled that invitation of ingathering the exiles. From the four corners of the world you have come. In a couple of months' time, we're going to read Lech Lecha, where God says to Abraham, gather your people from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and take them to the land that I will show you. Well, here it is. It's living, it's breathing, it's thriving, and you are a part of it. Those of you who are watching, who are living in different countries around the world, you are a part of the story of the Jewish people and the creation of this incredible state as well. To our Arab communities, our Druze communities, our Christian communities, our Cherkessi communities who play such a vital role every single day by serving in the army, serving in the government, serving in civil society, building businesses, entertaining us, amazing us on the sports field. Thank you for being a part of this great nation. Israel is not just for me and for my fellow Israelis. Israel is for all of you around the world who believe in the dream of Zionism, who believe in the modern day miracle, and who believe in the greatest shining jewel of a democracy in the Middle East. Chag Haatzmaut, Israel. You are 70 years old. You've never looked better, and we cannot wait to see what you are going to do when we meet again this time next year to celebrate another Yom Haatzmaut. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief. Thank you for celebrating along with us, and we'll catch you next week.